만나뵈서 대단히 감사합니다. 제가 영어, 한국말 자꾸 통역하다 보니까 지금 헷갈려서 그럽니다만, 하여간 대단히 감사합니다. 이렇게 와주셔서. 제가 오늘 사회를 맡은 연세대학교 문정인입니다. 여기 계신 분들 아주 대단하신 분들입니다. 그러니까 우리 바로 옆에 계신 분이 닌 대사님이시고, 트라이벳 대학이라고 새롭게 생기는 대학의 총장님이신데, 호지민시티, 옛날 사이곤 쪽에서 지금 만들고 있습니다. 아주 실험대학을 만들고 있는데 환영 좀 해주십시오. 박수로 환영해 주십시오. 아츠시 세이키 개요대학 총장님이십니다. 오늘 오셨다가 오늘 또 저녁에 바로 가십니다. 이렇게 어려운 걸음 하신 분 박수로 환영해 주십시오. 우리 리 총장님은 그 유명한 대련, 그 딸렌에 있는 유명한 그 동북 재경대학 총장님이십니다. 아마 중국에서 재경대학으로는 가장 명문대학입니다. 박수로 환영해 주십시오. 그리고 여러분 잘 아시는 우리 고충석 전 총장님 소개하겠습니다. 그리고 그 옆에 계신 게렛 에반스 총장님은 사실상 호주 외무부 장관을 8년을 하신 분입니다. 그리고 지금 그 호주 국립대학에 거기에 지금 챈슬러로 계십니다. 다 같이 박수 좀 환영해 주십시오. 그리고 오늘 이걸 전부 다 호스트 해주신 분이 우리 허양진 총장입니다. 허 총장에게 박수를 보내주십시오. 오늘 진행은 이렇게 하겠습니다. 진행은 어떻게 하느냐면요. 허 총장님께서 간단한 발제를 5분 이내에 해주시고요. 그 다음에 여기 계신 분들이 3분에서 5분씩 간단히 발제를 해주시고, 그 다음에 제가 한두 질문을 하고, 그 다음 플로어에 오픈을 해서 가급적이면 토론할 수 있는 기회를 갖겠습니다. And also, it is a great honor to have a former president of Seoul National University, 조한규. Okay. 우리 조한규 서울대학교 전 총장님이신 조한규 총장님께서 여기 와주셨습니다. 이거 대단한 영광입니다. 저희들로서는. Okay, what I will do is this. Okay, let me speak in Korean, English. What I will do is this. I will ask President Hyang-jin of Jeju National University to give us 3 to 5 minutes in a basic, like keynote speech and whatever. Then that will be followed by this direction, okay, from Ambassador Nin and all the way down to talk about 3 to 5 minutes presentation. And afterwards, we can have open discussions, okay? Voila. 자, 허 총장 시작하시죠.
네, 반갑습니다. 동시 통역이 되기 때문에 준비된 원고를 가지고 말씀드리겠습니다. 제6회 평화와 번영을 위한 제주 포럼에 오신 아시아 태평양 지역의 전임 또는 현직 총장님들을 진심으로 환영합니다. 오래전부터 역사의 중심이 대서양에서 태평양으로 옮겨지고 있습니다. 세계 인구의 60% 정도가 집중되어 있는 아시아 지역의 경제 성장과 발전이 그러한 지적의 근원이 되고 있습니다. 역사의 중심이 서쪽에서 동쪽으로 옮겨지고 있다는 것은 아시아 태평양 지역의 역사적 책임도 그만큼 커지고 있다는 것을 의미하는 것이기도 합니다. 저는 오늘 아시아 태평양 지역의 역사적 과제와 책임이라는 시각에서 문제를 제기해 보고 싶습니다. 국제적 협력은 공동의 과제와 책임을 자각해야만 비로소 가능해진다고 믿기 때문입니다. 대서양 중심의 근대적 문화와 기술이 인류 역사에 기여한 공헌을 부정할 수는 없습니다. 그 문화와 기술이 개인적 자유를 확립했고 인류의 소비 수준을 대폭 향상시켰습니다. 그러나 잘 아시는 것처럼 근대적인 문화와 기술, 말하자면 대서양 모델은 이제 한계를 드러내고 있습니다. 환경문적 한계의 문제는 이미 상식이 되었습니다. 사라진 것 같았던 정의의 문제, 공동체적 지향도 다시 사회적 관심사가 되고 있습니다. 힘든 과제들이 우리들을 기다리고 있습니다. 대서양 모델이 이룩한 성과를 넘어 과거 획기적이지 않은 새로운 문명의 모델을 창조해내야 할 책임이 우리에게 부과되고 있는 것입니다. 그러한 인류사적 책임을 다해야만 진정으로 아시아 태평양 지역이 역사의 중심에 서게 되는 것이라고 말할 수 있을 것입니다. 그러한 역사적 과제 앞에서 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들에 부과된 책임 역시 막중하다고 할 수 있습니다. 사실은 대서양 모델의 기반이 바로 대학이라는 제도였습니다. 중세의 지중해 부근에서 시도되기 시작한 대학이라는 제도가 서유럽에서 활짝 피어남으로써 대서양 모델이 가능했던 것입니다. 그런 역할을 이제 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들이 감당해야 합니다. 아시아 태평양 지역이 대학들로서는 최고의 기회가 도래했다고 말할 수도 있습니다. 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들이 과연 이러한 역사적 책임을 감당하고 주어진 기회를 잡을 수 있을까요? 태평양 시대가 도래한다고 해서 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들이 저절로 발전하게 되는 것은 아닙니다. 현재의 상태에 대한 엄정한 평가 위에서 새로운 과제를 향한 개혁을 끊임없이 추진해야만 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들의 미래도 보장되는 것입니다. 저는 이 자리에서 몇 가지 방향을 제시해 보고 싶습니다. 첫째는 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들이 대서양 모델의 수용이라는 수동적 의식에서 벗어나야 한다는 것입니다. 지역에 내재한 고유 문화의 가치를 재평가하면서 새로운 모델을 형성하려는 문제의식 속에서 상상력을 발휘하는 것이 무엇보다 중요하다고 생각합니다. 둘째는 다양성, 차이를 존중해야 한다는 것입니다. 태평양 시대는 진정으로 동과 서가 융합되는 역사적 시대로 진입한다는 의미를 지니고 있습니다. 이제 진정한 의미에서 세계가 하나로 되는 것입니다. 다양성, 차이의 상호 존중은 이제 불가피해졌습니다. 거기에 그치는 것이 아닙니다. 양에서 질로 중점이 옮겨지는 시대적 조류 속에서 각각의 대학들은 나름대로 특성화된 분야에서 다양하게 최고의 품질을 추구해야 합니다. 셋째는 국제적 협력입니다. 다원화된 구조 속에서 각각의 대학들은 서로 모자라는 부분들을 상호 의존해 나가지 않을 수 없습니다. 공동의 과제와 책임을 함께 감당해 나가려는 의지도 중요한 것입니다. 대학 간의 국제적 교류와 협력을 가로막고 있는 언어적, 제도적, 문화적 장벽을 제거하는 것이 시급한 과제가 되고 있습니다. 지금 한국의 대학들은 특성화를 통한 교육, 연구 경쟁력 강화, 국제화 수준 제고, 실무 능력 강화 및 취업률 제고를 위한 산학협력 강화라는 화두를 가지고 광범위한 혁신을 시도하고 있습니다. 저희 제주대학교도 글로컬 시대의 뉴 리더라는 슬로건 아래에서 지속적인 대학 계획을 추진하고 있습니다. 특히 제주대학교는 제주특별자치도 지방정부와 함께 한중일 3국이 가운데 위치한 섬이라는 지리적 특성에 주목하며 국제적 교류와 협력을 발전의 주요 동인으로 설정하고 있습니다. 저는 오늘 이 자리가 아시아 태평양 지역의 대학들에 부여된 역사적 과제에 능동적으로 대처하기 위한 방안에 대해 진지하게 논의하는 자리가 되기를 기대합니다. 전직, 현직 총장님들의 경험과 비전이 새로운 시각을 열어줄 것으로 확신합니다. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you. I will depart from the talking points that I submitted in order to focus on, to make out 5 points focusing on the challenges rather than the opportunities, and I hope they will be debated later. I suppose we all agree that education, and in particular higher education, is central to whether the 21st century will be the Asia-Pacific century in many ways. First, because of the challenge of bringing into play higher education for poverty reduction. And therefore, we have to resolve the question of tension between excellence and access against the background of tighter budgets. And in the specific area of Asia, the relationship between public and private provision of higher education, which entails the whole issue of quality and for-profit or not-for-profit, something which is very different from the scene in Europe and the United States. Second point is what kind of teaching learning we want to deliver. This is the tension between training, which is more short-term, and education, which is in fact career and lifelong. And I was thinking of the very powerful article written by the president of Yale University about the rise of Asia's universities, which was both optimistic but which also underlined the great challenge of if we don't change the pedagogy in Asia, it is not certain that we can rise to the promise. And he also mentioned the challenge of R&D investment in order to garner the kind of technology advance and innovation that we need to be the 21st century, to make the 21st century an Asian century. But the question is, for developing countries, especially the smaller, the medium-sized developing countries, what kind of research are we talking about? If we put money, should it be in fundamental research, which is very expensive, which is very long-term in kinds of fallout, or applied, and so on and so forth? This kind of problematic is crucial to a country like Vietnam, which has very modest resources. The fourth point I'd like to make, and it was touched upon a little bit by the president of Jeju National University, we live in a globalized world where internationalization for all universities, including Ivy League and top-tier universities of the developed world, internationalization is a must. But that demand, that exigency goes against must go together with due respect and integration of national, regional, community identity, which is stronger than ever in all its forms, be it ethnic, religious, or cultural. It's the question of what kind of model, questions of, while being very national and sometimes even nationalistic, we have to accept the indispensability of the English language as the lingua franca of knowledge and scientific exchange. Finally, the fifth point I'd like to bring here is the outflow of Asian students. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Asian students move to more developed countries, mostly in US, North America, and Europe. Just for the case of Vietnam, at end of 2008, 60,000 students were studying abroad. Now, make an economic or financial calculation. If we take an average of $30,000 per student for tuition fees and living expenses, it means Vietnam, this then still, poor country, was paying out $2 billion a year in reverse flow of remittances to the developed world. And when you know that this trend is going to increase, and if you pose the question, now, is it a long-term investment, strategic investment? But that would require that the majority of them do return at some point in time. Else, it's a real brain drain and, let's say, financial hemorrhage. So this kind of problematic, I think, is something also that Asia has to take into account. It's a good investment, but to make it really sustainable and fully effective, we need to make sure that we can entice by creating domestically an attractive environment for them to return. That then only can we say that we've made the best of this deal, that we've made it a win-win proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And President Seikin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a very few very important friends whose request I never reject, and Professor Moon is one of them, and that's the reason why I'm here. And it seems that I'm only one Japanese panelist, and I am now serving as president of Japanese University as well as the president of Japanese Private Universities Federation. So before I talk about my topics on behalf of Japanese university community, I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation for all the support and the sympathy that the international university community has showed us when we had an earthquake, tsunami tragedy. In fact, for example, President Kim Han-jun of Yonsei University, which is our sister university, sent his personal email just after the earthquake tsunami accident. And that was really, moving and encouraging message from abroad, which I deeply appreciate. We usually use the word of international community or something like that, but I really felt that really means, international community or international friends. And besides the earthquake and the tsunami, the world is currently facing many serious problems on a global scale. And I think while the problems themselves are diverse, I think that many of them are essentially related to the problem of sustainability. I mean, for example, the problem of global warming relates to the sustainability of the planet we live on, the Earth, and the nuclear issues relate to the sustainability of international security, or problems with the fiscal situations of some countries. I don't think Japan is not yet the case, but I hope it will not. But today, anyway, relates to the sustainability of states and so on. So under these situations we face, of course, the role of university as a research and educational institution is to advance education and research to solve these problems. In education, it is, I think, important for us to foster students who can think independently or who can think for themselves. This is because in order to cope with largely discontinuous change when the sustainability of many aspects is in question, you cannot consider things as simply being extensions of the past events. To understand new situations and solve problems based on this understanding, people who are able to think independently are more necessary than ever. In research, in order to solve the problems related to sustainability, we need to have both in-depth expert analysis and interdisciplinary approach. I believe that Asia-Pacific Rim universities, which have a host of high-caliber faculties, have the potential to synthesize their various strengths across many fields to find solutions. I think that one of the research areas in which there is a potential for collaboration among Asia-Pacific Rim universities is the aging population. I mean, increasing proportion of older people or, shrinking population itself. An aging population is already one of the common or most serious problem, particularly in East Asian countries, including Japan and Korea, that are already threatening the sustainability of societies. And it will become a serious problem too for other Asian countries, Asia-Pacific Rim countries, sooner or later. It causes serious problems for sustainability of many types, including the sustainability of social security system and eventually of economic growth in general. I think the Asia-Pacific Rim nations share many of the same features of the aging population problem, such as the way their society ages and the low birth rate. This is particularly the case for East Asian countries. So I think there is a big potential for research collaboration to find some solutions by using various academic results. So, on one hand, an aging population, for example, with a low birth rate will make the competition keener among Asia-Pacific Rim universities for recruiting new young students. However, on the other hand, this is an opportunity for us to work together in making ourselves more attractive to our student and overseas student beyond the Asia-Pacific Rim boundary through furthering educational collaborations. In the field of research, it will bring a wide range of opportunities, as I just mentioned about research collaboration on the aging problem. We can therefore use our collaborative research achievement to solve the problem, for example, an aging society. And our collaboration to cope with this problem in Asia-Pacific Rim countries would also be able to contribute to the rest of the world. I think there will be sort of 3 C words. I mean, competition, collaboration, and contribution. And through competition, of course, we can improve our quality of education and research. However, through collaboration, maybe we will be able to further, advance the quality of our education and research. And then we can make a contribution to the improvement of our society. So I'm very much looking forward to see the fruitful result of collaboration among Asia-Pacific universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we'll turn to President Lee. Please.
Good afternoon, my dear Chair, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to share such an important topic about the future of Asia, the function of higher education. As we all know, this world is changing so fast, and we all have to try our best to adjust to it. So does the higher education. To some extent, we can even see this is a post-era. So today, I'd like to talk about some changes and challenges faced by higher education in such a post-era. Undoubtedly, these changes and challenges will have a great influence on China and even on the whole Asia. Firstly, changes and challenges faced by higher education. In post-financial crisis era, as we all know, with the end of financial crisis, the whole world is in the era of recovery period, and with the deepening of the global development in higher education. Education field has shown an increasing diversified learning model. To strengthen the construction of the ability of higher education and to enhance the competence of higher education, more and more countries are exploring new, diversified, and flexible running mechanisms of higher education institutions. In such a case, higher education mechanism is facing one of the biggest challenges and opportunities. And I think in such a post-financial era, the cultivation of a brand new education culture and the update of education reform are very important. This carries great significance for us and maybe for all of you. And I think it is especially the case for us business-related universities. Secondly, changes and challenges faced by higher education in the area of post-recruiting enlargement. The higher education of China and maybe the whole Asia had entered into the stage of popularization. In China's case, by the end of 2005, the total number of college students had already reached more than 23 million, which ranked number one among the world. In 2006, China's total number of college students was 25 million. And by 2010, there are 30 million college students. And the gross enrollment rate was 22%. So, in our opinion, one of the central tasks is to improve teaching quality and to modify the structure. So the present challenge of university is to improve teaching quality and to propose an effective system of teaching quality management, which may include establishing the multiple concepts of quality, and introducing the social institutions and agencies to the management system. Personally, I insisted that higher education should implement elite education, control volume, but to increase the quality. But on the other hand, since more and more young people are dreaming a quality life, it is suitable to have a purpose is passion, but we should not go too far. Quality is very important too. Thirdly, changes and challenges faced by higher education in the area of post-assessment area. As the schedules of university improved, all sectors of society have begun to give universities unprecedentedly enthusiasm and hope. But as a guiding mechanism and a regulation method, the assessment activities have got more and more attention and have become the focus of much criticism. We want to improve the teaching quality by the way of assessment, but how to really promote the development of higher education, achieve the purpose of diversification, and at the same time regulate the governance behavior of higher education is a big challenge. And it needs all of us to pay more attention to it. In the area of assessment, universities are becoming more and more similar. But in the area of post-assessment, how to get diversified is a great challenge. Last but not the least important, changes and challenges faced by higher education in the area of de-administration. In modern academic field, academic elite, to a large extent, constitute the principal part of academic authority. They not only play the role of gatekeeper for academic community, but also function as a mediator between academic and administrative forces. At present, in China, we have a de-administrative tendency. However, the balancing of administrative forces and academic elite is a hard job for all of us, and a lot of work needs to be done. To sum up today, I theoretically talked a lot about the changes and challenges faced by higher education in the area of post-financial crisis, post-recruiting enlargement, post-assessment, and de-administration. But just like what we know, it is easier to say, but hard to do. And I think we need to work together for the bright future of both higher education and Asia. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, now President 고충석 총장님.
예, 초청해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저는 이 고등교육 문제는 저희 토론 시간에 말씀을 드리고, 제가 오늘 말씀드릴 것은 동북아 평화 번영을 위해서 대학이 어떤 역할을 해야 될 것인가, 특히 제주대학이 어떤 역할을 할 수 있는가, 이런 거에 초점을 맞춰서 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 한중일 삼국을 중심으로 하는 동북아 지역은 다 아시는 바와 마찬가지로 2000년대에 들어서 EU와 북미 지역에 이어 세계 3대 경제권의 하나로 부상하였습니다. 동북아 국가들이 평화 속의 번영을 바라고 있으나 여전히 동북아 지역에서 협력과 공동 번영 비전을 실현하는 과정에서 철회해야 할 걸림돌이 남아 있습니다. 첫째, 동북아뿐만 아니라 아시아 전체를 통틀어서 협력과 공동 번영의 비전에 가장 큰 걸림돌이 되고 있는 것은 과거의 유산이라고 할 것입니다. 과거의 침략과 뼈아픈 식민 통치를 쉽게 잊지 못하고 있는 상황에서 신뢰 구축과 협력은 요원하다 할 것입니다. 둘째, 동북아에서는 국제협력의 경험이 일천하여 국가 간의 신뢰 구축에 더욱 어려움을 꺾고 있습니다. 셋째, 동북아 국가들의 가치체계가 상이하여 이러한 정치-경제적 차이가 협력과 공동의 번영 구상에 어려움을 주고 있습니다. 그래서 동북아 국가들의 동질성 형성은 매우 중요하다, 이렇게 말씀드릴 수 있습니다. 다행스럽게도 정치 안보 분야와는 달리 동북아 여러 국가들이 경제와 문화 분야에서의 통합과 협력은 가속화되고 있습니다. 경제협력과 상호투자는 증가하고 있으며 최근의 한류 문화는 동북아의 이질성을 줄이고 동질성을 증가시키는 데 큰 기여를 하고 있습니다. 유럽 통합에 있어서 여러 가지 요인들이 복합적으로 기여하였겠지만 유럽 국가들이 공유하는 높은 수준의 동질성도 큰 목을 하였다 할 것입니다. 일본의 지진으로 많은 사람들이 고통을 겪는 상황이 발생하자 한국을 포함한 아시아 많은 국가들이 자발적인 인도적 도움이 일본으로 세도하였습니다. 동북아에서 중국, 일본, 한국의 군비 중강은 경쟁적으로 강화되고 있습니다. 이러한 군비 경쟁과 더불어 역설적이게도 경제적 측면에서는 서로 통합하면서 날로 협력이 증가하고 있습니다. 정치와 경제는 밀집한 연관이 있으므로 정치 안보적인 불신 때문에 경제적 협력에서도 궁극적으로 한계를 로정시키고 있습니다. 안보에 대한 불신이 상존하는 한 진정한 의미의 경제 공동체를 이루는 것은 사실상 불가능하기 때문입니다. 이와 같은 동북아 지역 협력을 위한 새로운 접근 방법의 하나로 국가를 초월한 지방이나 도시 간 국제교류 협력이 크게 주목받고 있습니다. 이른바 지방외교나 도시외교의 등장이 그것인데, 이는 오늘날 새로운 국제관계의 특징적 현상 가운데 하나가 되고 있습니다. 실제로 최근 동북아 국가들 사이에는 동북아 도시 간 네트워크 구축이 활발하게 추진되고 있습니다. 그런데 황해 지역의 배세토라든가 아시아 태평양 도시들의 관광진흥기구 등의 네트워크가 여러 네트워크가 있습니다. 그리고 한중일 3국 도시들 간의 상호 교류 협력도 활발히 진행되고 있습니다. 이처럼 지방외교나 도시 외교의 아이디어는 국가 차원에서 풀기 어려운 역사적 난제들을 우회하여 지방이나 도시의 실질적 상호이익을 위한 실용적인 접근을 가능하게 한다는 점에서 동북아 지역 협력의 새로운 아이디어라고 할 것입니다. 그런데 여기에 또 하나 중요한 아이디어자 접근 방법이 바로 대학 간 교류 협력이라고 할 수 있습니다. 유럽 통합에서 대학 지성인들의 가장 중요한 역할 중 하나가 유럽 통합을 위한 인식 공동체를 구축해 나간 것이라고 할 수 있습니다. 이런 유럽 대학과 지성들의 경험을 고려해 본다면 동북아 지역 대학들은 형식적이기보다는 실용적 차원에서 동북아 지역의 평화와 공동 번영을 위한 인식 공동체 구축에 노력해야 할 것입니다. 이를 위해 각 대학의 이해에 대한 연구 활동뿐만 아니라 지속적 교류와 협력이 강화 및 공동 연구가 절실하다고 할 것입니다. 대학 간의 학문적 교류와 더불어 학생 교류는 서로의 문화에 대한 공감과 이해의 폭을 넓히게 할 것이며 하나의 아시아라는 공감대를 형성하게 될 것입니다. 하와이 대학에서 운영하고 있는 동서문화센터는 미국과 아시아 태평양 국가들의 대화, 연구 분야에서의 협력을 중진시키고 있습니다. 이 동서문화센터의 성공적 운영 사례를 모델로 하여 제주대학교에도 동북아의 번영과 평화의 비전을 구성하고 실천하는 기관으로서 제주 동아시아 문화센터가 건립되기를 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
네, 고맙습니다. 시간에 잘 지켜주셔서. Garrett?
Well, thank you, Chong-in. I guess it's not so long ago that Australia would have been a rather unusual participant in a gathering like this. But for a long time now, really, we in Australia have known that the kind of society we are and that we want to be is really shaped much more by our geography than by our history. And it is, in fact, in this area of higher education that our real and genuine commitment to engagement with the Asian region, I think, has been more evident than just about anywhere else. Education is our third largest export industry, and more than a quarter of the more than 1 million Australian higher education students are actually international students, and they come overwhelmingly from Asia, the largest single number from China. Moreover, it is the case that Australia's 40 universities, certainly all the major ones, are very strongly committed to strengthening outreach and partnership research and teaching arrangements with counterpart institutions around the region. There are many specific challenges which have been mentioned by other speakers on which I'd like, had we time, to comment. But let me just focus on one particular issue, that of access, to ensure that there are no access barriers to low-income families or those from deprived regions, and to ensure that in the interests not only of moral equity and social harmony, but also to ensure that no talents are wasted, particularly given the huge needs for more human capital, more skilled and trained human capital that we all have. I want to focus on this issue, I guess, for three reasons. One, because it's of particular relevance and importance right across this region, along with all the other issues of quantity and quality of educational delivery, the access question. Secondly, because it's an issue close to my heart, given my own long political background. And thirdly, because it's an issue on which, as some of you, but probably not all, will know, Australia has actually come up with quite an innovative solution, which is now being widely embraced internationally and may have some real utility as a solution or a partial solution to this problem right across Asia. The issue of financing students' study is obviously a very difficult one to come to grips with. Government grant or subsidy funding for this purpose has simply not been and won't be in the future in any of our countries available on the scale that's necessary. In the United States, you've had a tremendous reliance on private sector alumni and general philanthropic scholarship support. But again, we know that that's unlikely to fill the gap in our own region. And we also know that ordinary bank loans are simply too expensive for poorer students to be able to repay. The particular solution that we came up with in Australia back in 1989, in the government of which I was a member, and which has been since embraced in the UK and South Africa and New Zealand, and is being looked at in a lot of other places, is a system of income contingent loans, where under this system, repayments of the government loans that are made to cover student fees are calculated as a portion of the income earned by the student after he or she has graduated, and repayments are only required if the graduate is actually earning above a certain threshold. There's no repayment hardship issue if a graduate loses his or her job. People pay more as their income goes up. They pay less or nothing when their income is low or non-existent. And the system in our country, and the others that have adopted it for the most part, has worked very well from the perspective both of government and taxpayers on the one hand and students on the other, with lower income students demonstrably suffering no disadvantage. The only problem with this system of income contingent loans is that its effective implementation does depend on the administrative capacity of the tax system of the country in question, where you do require a very reliable method, obviously, of identifying individuals and the capacity to maintain records of amounts borrowed and cumulative borrowing and interest charges and the value of each person's repayments. That might create problems for a number of countries in the region now, as it did, for example, with Thailand when it had to discontinue the system shortly after introducing it 4 years ago because of administrative problems that they ran into. But it's difficult, I think, with the growing sophistication of administration in all the countries in this region, to see this as being a major barrier into the future. So, financing of higher education and the way in which we can guarantee equitable access to it is just one of the many challenges that we'll be facing in this sector in the years ahead. But I thought it might be helpful and interesting to put this particular, quite specific, possible solution into the mix of our debate today, and I hope it is something that people around the region will look at seriously in the future.
Thank you. 이렇게 하도록 하겠습니다. 제가 한 몇 가지 질문을 하고요. 그 다음 플로어에 오픈을 하도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 let me start with President Seikei. Keio University is the oldest university in Japan. Oldest private university, yes, other than imperial universities. Okay. Now, Keio has been very, very successful for the past 100 years. 150 years. Okay. Then what is your vision? How are you leading Keio University into the future? What kinds of students do you want to produce? What kinds of faculty members you wanted to create in the coming 50 years?
That's a good question. You know, it's always a problem with, for the university president or leaders of a university to balance between, tradition and new challenge. And if you have a long, years of history, you have to take, to some extent, account of your history. So you can't change, the trend or previous policy completely. So basically, I think what I would like to say is I basically would like to, at first, keep good tradition of my university. And fortunately, that tradition was set by our founder, Yukichi Fukuzawa. And what he emphasize is the importance of science. You know, as I told you, we are now facing a very drastic change. But in the time of Yukichi Fukuzawa, when he established my university, it was also, upheaval time of Japan, from, feudal area to a modern area. And in order to make, the Japanese society at first survive under the pressure of Western, militarism or Western imperialism, what Fukuzawa emphasized was science. And I think the reason why he emphasized the science is, I told you, we now need to have young people who can think independently. And I think think independently means essentially, scientific way of thinking. Find a problem and constructing a hypothesis about why these problems have occurred, and then test these hypotheses by objective means and to come conclusion. So I think we need to keep this trend, this tradition, to foster young people to think independently. That means we need to provide more we need to have more effort to provide more programs and opportunities to young students to obtain a scientific way of thinking, and that is one thing I need to do. And the other point, let me finish. The other, I think, challenge we need to do is, as our colleague mentioned a little bit, we are now facing a very diversified world in many aspects, internationally or domestically. In the past, most of our workshop is men-dominated, but we are now having more women in the workplace and more older people and more, international, people who have a different cultural background. So I think what we need now is to foster students who will be able to deal with, many kinds of diversification, or, or, for example, to communicate with people who have a different cultural background and something like that. And in order to do that, I think we need to have a more diversified faculty in terms of nationality, or in terms of gender, or in terms of age.
Ambassador Nin, now you are trying to create a new university, private university. What kind of model do you have in mind? For example, Fukuzawa Yukichi-san has given the mandate of scientific way of thinking to Keio, but what do you have in mind? What kind of university you wanted to build?
Like my country, I think the age of set models is over. So Vietnam, I don't think is going to adopt just one single model. Although the U.S. model or system at the moment seems to be the most successful to cope with the new challenges, perhaps more successful than the European system, at least in terms of, let's say, nimbleness, flexibility, and adaptability to new emerging challenges. So just as in our economic restructuring and reforms, Vietnam has been shopping and synthesizing. Vietnam's culture is very syncretic. We are very good at, kind of melting pot of what we find and we can learn. So I don't think our university will depart from that kind of fundamental approach. Now, so for us at GVIET, we have decided that in terms of academic engagement, because it is very clear, Vietnam cannot have a top-notch university that does not engage with international academic partners. But because Vietnam is in this favorable situation of having good relations with all countries in the world, why should we do only an American-style university or a British-style university or a French-style university for that matter. What we at TVET we say a Vietnamese university that tends towards international standards and that is globally connected and boldly open to the modern world. And again, this is the kind of balance that we want to achieve. I was also asked, if you are a private university with relatively high tuition fees, is your university going to be an elite university? And my answer to that is, if you mean a financial elite, definitely not, because of the reasons that Professor Evans has raised. In Asia, education, including higher education, has to be part of the solution to poverty reduction. It should not create more problems in the continuing fight against poverty and disenfranchisement. But if you mean elite, meaning the best in whatever endeavor you are undertaking, by all means. In other words, TVET also wants to nurture leadership and leaders in all fields that it will train and educate its students in.
Professor Evans, let me raise one question. Okay, I think the Ambassador Nin made a very interesting point. We all Asian universities wanted to internationalize, and we all wanted to enjoy surplus in educational balance of payment. We have more foreign students, but you said that education in Australia is the third largest export industry. But Vietnam, Japan, South Korea, China, we all wanted to have a university which can have more foreign students. What do you see the trend there? What is the Australian strategy to overcome that dilemma?
Well, I think we've just got to go on being the best at what we do, and also, of course, be affordable. And that's very difficult with the Australian dollar now getting as strong as it is, as the American one gets limper and limper, and other equally attractive destinations for students are working harder than we have been working in recent times to get rid of visa restrictions and things of that kind. It's a very competitive environment out there for all of us. And I think we just have to relish that competition and roll up our sleeves and just be very, very good at what we do. There's no place for shoddy education provision. That's one of the problems that we've had, not so much at the university level, but other forms of vocational education. And your country can lose its reputation very, very quickly if you play the game of going down market and just attracting students at all costs. You have to have a product which is distinctive and based on a very, very high quality education, because that's the need that's out there in the region. And we think we can go on supplying it, but the proof will be in the testing in the future.
고충숙 총장님, 우리 제주대학도 그렇게 세계적인 명문 대학이 될 수 있다고 보십니까?
네, 전 그렇게 생각합니다. 제가 이제 그 총장을 하면서 느낀 건 역시 그 선발보단 교육이 중요하다. 이것이 대학 운영의 기본이 돼야 되는데, 우리 한국의 대학들은 너무 선발에만 초점을 맞추는 것 같아요. 학생들 뽑아다가 이 학생들을 어떻게 교육시킬 건가 하는 것이 중요한 건데, 우리 제주대학교의 몇 가지 이제 조건, 몇 가지의 역량을 이렇게 집중하면 충분 세계적인 대학이 가능하다. 첫 번째는 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 교육의 품질을 상당히 높여야 된다. 이거지. 교육 품질을 높이려면 그 사회가 필요로 하는 그 학생들을, 인물들을 키워내야 공급해야 된다. 그 방법의 하나로 산학협력, 또 무슨 특성화, 또 요새 자주 이야기합니다. 자기 전공을 넘나드는 통섭적 인간, 이런 것들을 상당히, 이런 학생들을 많이 교육을 시켜서 사회에 내놓아야 되고, 또 하나는 우리 제주대학교가 이제 다른 지수는 상당히 높습니다. 우리나라에서도. 그런데 국제화 지수가 상당히 낮습니다. 그래서 제 대학을 어떻게 국제화시키느냐. 이 국제화시키는 문제는 학생 측면의 국제화뿐만 아니고 교수 측면의 국제화도 상당히 높여나가야 된다. 적어도 우리 제주대학교 학생들의 10% 정도는 빠른 시간 내에 외국에 10% 정도 내보내고, 우리 제주대학교 정원의 10% 정도를 외국 학생들로 받아들이는, 그래서 정말 국제화 캠퍼스로 가면 충분 제주대학은 난 명문대학이 될 수 있다. 이런
허 총장님, 그렇게 하실 수 있겠습니까? 재임 기간 중에? 네. 구체적 증거를 좀 대보십시오. 마이크.
아까 말씀하신 선발에만 초점을 맞추고 왔다는 점에 대해서 저희들이 좀 반성을 하고, 지금은 학부 교육에 대해서 학생들에게 보다 더 높은 수준의 또 아주 치밀한 관리를 통한 그런 교양 교육부터 시작해서 관리하려는 그런 시스템을 지금 갖춰가고 있습니다. 그래서 조직적으로는 지금 우리 기초 교육을 만들었고, 또 교과 과정을 개편해서 이제 형식적인 학과의 전공 운영이라든지 교양 운영이 아니고 실질적으로 학생이 도움이 될 수 있는 그러한 노력을 하고 있습니다. 특히 또 저희 지방대학이 또 상당한 약점으로 작용하고 있는 영어 교육 문제가 수준이 낮다는 문제에 대해서 영어 교육 강화 방안을 지금 수립해서 우리 학생들에게 영어 능력을 향상시켜 나가는 이런 학생들에 대한 장학금 제도도 지금 이번에 새롭게 만들고 하면서 일단 학부 교육을 좀 강화시켜서 실제로 사회가 요구하는 그러한 교육을 해나가야 되겠다 하는 그것을 실제로 실천을 하려고 지금 하고 있고요. 그 다음에 산학협력이라는 것이 이제 교과부에서 교육 당국에서 산학협력 선도대학 선정을 이제 내년에 합니다. 그래서 저희들도 그에 대한 지금 시안, 그러니까 기초적인 안만 나왔지만은 그 안부터 시작해서 치밀하게 준비를 하기 위한 지금 TF팀이랄까 이걸 조직해서 거의 대응해서 사회에 맞는 사회 수요 맞춤형 인재들을 양성하는 노력을 하고 있습니다. 그와 더불어서 국제화 지수가 낮다는 점에 대해서도 공감을 하고요. 근데 유학생 수가 우리 제주대학에 이제 유치되는 유학생 수가 작년에 비해서 금년도에 한 30% 이상 급증을 하고 있고, 또 저희 우리 제주대학교 학생들이 외국에 나가는 파견 학생도 작년에 한 50명 이내에서 올해 한 50명이 넘는 학생을 지금 해외에 6개월 이상 한 학기 이상 학점을 15학점, 18학점을 이수할 수 있는 해외 파견 학생을 금년도에 선발해서 내보냅니다. 2학기부터. 이런 것들이 극명하게 숫자가 달라지고 있고, 아까 우리 고추조 총장이 말씀하신 500명 해외 파견, 그리고 1000여 명 10%인 1000여 명의 외국 유학생 유치, 요거를 2014년까지는 반드시 달성할 수 있도록 저희들이 각고의 노력을 하겠습니다.
지켜보겠습니다. 여기 증인들이 많기 때문에 말씀하세요.
우리 오늘 이제 에반스 총장님이나 세익기 총장님 오셨는데, 이게 하 총장님이 제일 궁금하신 사항인 것 같아요. 제가 총장할 때 그 교수들의 연구는 상당히 평가할 수 있는 가치적 지표들이 나와 있는데, 교육 품질을 높이려면 교육을 잘하는 교수님들을 평가해서 아주 높은 점수를 받으신 분들에게 여러 가지 인센티브를 드려야 된단 말이죠. 제가 총장 때 그걸 못하고 나왔어요. 열심히 연구를 했는데 그 뾰족한 수가 없습니다. 그래서 이 두 총장님께 이 호주나 개요대학에서는 이 교육 잘하는 교수님들 평가를 정성적 평가, 계량적 평가, 이 지표 도출하기 어려워요. 그거 한번 여쭤보세요.
Okay. President Seiki first, and then Garrett.
That's a difficult question. At first, as far as a researcher, I mean, if you regard a university professor as a researcher, I think assessment was made by a peer review. Okay, I mean, I think this is a universal phenomenon. Peer review is very important for you to assess a university professor as a researcher. So I think this is not so difficult. And if you really want to have a good professor, you can, have a good referee group to find out, or, recruiting a committee to find out some good researchers by using some, indicators like impact index or something like that. And as a teacher, professor as a teacher, I think it's not so easy for you to evaluate. I mean, it depends on maybe students. It's easy for you to, teach good students. And it, of course, difficult to teach, not so good students. So it depends on the circumstance, how these, university professors are good teacher or not. So basically, I have no idea about is there any good indicators or a good, assessment method to, evaluate, teaching ability. Of course, there are some ways to do that. For example, you can ask your student to what extent this teacher have willingness or ability to teach, and I think this will help to some extent. But I don't think there is any sort of perfect indicators or evaluation method for you to evaluate the the ability of a teacher. The assess the professor as a teacher.
Maybe Australia might have quantitative indicators.
Well, the only thing we're good at in Australia or anywhere else in the world, I think, for that matter, is doing assessment of output as measured by very, very formal objective criteria like publication or citations in accepted professional journals and the amount of peer group reference there are to those publications that you make. That works very well in the traditional scientific disciplines. It tends not to work very well at all in the humanities disciplines. And it certainly doesn't work, even begin to work, when you're talking about trying to evaluate teaching, which is subject to exactly the difficulties everywhere in the world, including Australia, that you mentioned. We rely a lot on student evaluations. But that can be very problematic because some of the most popular teachers are the ones that mark in the softest fashion and give the most gentle possible treatment to their students. As I'm discovering, going back into the teaching business after 35 years, grade inflation has dramatically escalated during the time I was away, and I now count as a very, very tough teacher, and I suspect I will be evaluated accordingly by my students. It's a real problem getting anything objective here. But there's also a third problem, I think, in evaluating the comparative performance of universities, both domestically and internationally, and evaluating the performance of individuals within them. And that's the contribution that universities should be making to the public policy debate. I mean, I think a great university is one that is great in terms of research, both pure and applied, is great in terms of the educational experience, the teaching and learning experience it gives its students, but is also great in the contribution that it delivers to the national and indeed international public policy debate. But an awful lot of that contribution takes the form of articles in journals which don't satisfy the requirement of being read by nobody other than one's peers in that particular discipline, which makes you very acceptable in terms of formal evaluation, but absolutely useless in terms of actual real-world impact. We talk about impact evaluations, but how do you do it? You count the number of op-ed articles people write. I mean, how do you evaluate quality? All this stuff is very difficult. And there's a real danger, particularly with all this obsession with international rankings and Shanghai Jiatong indexes versus Times Higher indexes and so on. There's a real danger that we'll concentrate on what is objectively measurable and forget about some of the larger values that good universities should be about.
Okay, Madam Nin.
I'd like to add one way of measuring, and that is employability of graduates. After all, the first thing is the job market. I was talking about the life, the career, but the first thing that you can measure, at least in the competition, is how soon and well employed the students are. I also know that we notice that there are universities, especially the Ivy League and all that, who say, well, we have groomed so many presidents and prime ministers and heads of multinationals and whatnot. So that may be also another way. A third way, I think, is the kind of students you attract. That is to say, instead of employability at the way out, you look at the way in. What kind of students you attract. So the quality of student entrance, I think, and by that I don't mean only in terms of grades. So I would favor also a more sensitive and qualified approach to determining quality of students and, frankly, of professors as well. Frankly, the question of student assessment, it's an exercise in democracy, and as Professor Evans mentioned, demagoguery, exists also in the academic world. Yeah.
President Seiki?
Let me raise a very brief question or comments on Professor Evans' accessibility problem. The public or taxpayer is supporting universities, and it's very expensive. And as a university administrator, I always appreciate all branch of government support. But my original background is economist. So from economist point of view, if public or taxpayer is paying some money, maybe university education have some aspects of public goods. Okay, if it's a completely private goods, you shouldn't get public support. And my understanding is that is because the taxpayer is supporting universities. Now, the question is about international student. We are having more and more international students, and of course we are willing to do that, and we appreciate that. But from maybe taxpayers' point of view, maybe there is some rationale or some reason for taxpayers to pay money for foreign student. I think one maybe explanation is if you have a more international student, maybe you have a more friend in the international community that makes your country more secure, something like that. And I'm just curious to know your explanation or theoretical rationale to do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, in the Australian context, there's not much taxpayer or government subsidising of international students. They are basically paying their own way because there would be a high level of resistance, I think, to direct subsidies of that kind. There is some degree of subsidisation, and I think that is rationalised in terms of the kind of outreach and engagement that it gives us with future friends in the region, and also the adding extra value and vibrancy to the Australian student experience, having so many international students around them. But frankly, you could not begin to justify a system where there was direct government subsidy for international students. You've got to rely on just having a quality product which will attract students who are able and willing to pay the fees.
너무 적극적인 패널리스트 때문에 이제 플로우의 오프닝은 안 되겠지만요. 그냥 한 분 꼭 이 질문 꼭 해야 되겠다는 분. 우리 이 총장, 전주대학교 이 총장인데, he's president of Jeonju University.
Thank you for wonderful discussions, and I would like to mention and I would like to share our experience in the role of higher education in Asia-Pacific region. And at least to cooperate each other, we should understand about mutual benefits in education. For example, in Korea, there are so many Chinese students in higher education. And also, there are so many Korean companies in China. So in case of our Jeonju University, we have almost 600 students right now. We survey about what they want. So most of students want to get job in Korea or Korean companies. So we try to find out the mutual benefit between Chinese students and the Korean companies. So we visited many good Korean companies in China: Samsung, LG, SDX, EMAT, Hynix Semiconductors, and Nexen Tires. And last year, we had the first Chinese graduate from our university, and almost 30 Chinese students get a good job in China. So I think through this kind of experience, we can improve the mutual benefits, and also we can satisfy the student satisfaction. So I think to continue our cooperation in the Asia-Pacific regions, we should also try to understand what will be the benefits for the universities and also students. Thank you very much.
감사합니다. 또 다른 분, 조금 이분들 그래도 이거 1시간 하려고 지금 호주에서 오시고, 우리 또 세익기 총장님은 지금 오후에 도착하셨다가 이제 저녁 비행기 타고 다시 또 김포로 간답니다. 왜냐하면 내일 게이오 대학하고 와세다 대학교 베이스볼 게임이 있답니다. 그러니까 총장님 꼭 가셔야 된답니다. 뭐 다른 질문 없으세요? 우리 총장님 딱 한 말씀 좀 해주시죠, 뭐. 네. 우리 총장님 오시기 네.
이제 한국말로 하겠습니다. 예, 예. 그리고 저 제후대학 총장님들 고민 정말로 제가 이해하고 남습니다. 이 지방대학이라는 것 때문에 오는 여러 가지 참 불리한 거, 이거 이제 극복을 해야 되는데, 나는 제주에도 우수한 고등학교가 있습니다. 아주 우수한 학생, 졸업생을 내는 고등학교가 있습니다. 제가 알기로는 오평 고등학교가 좀 우수한 학교를 냅니다만. 그게 좋습니다. 전부 다 지역 주민이거나 아니면은 학부모들이 전부 서울이거나 다른 데 보낸다. 그러니까 이 지역 주민 학부모들이 의식이 좀 바뀌어가지고 그 우수한 학생들 제주대학에 보내는 운동을 벌려야 될 거 아닌가. 그래 그 지역이 발전하게 되는 겁니다. 근데 그 제주대학 보면은 다 참 나라가 세워서 돈 대면서 하는 교육기관인데 그 보면은 결국은 뭐 1, 3류 대학으로 쳐져버리면은 그럴 수도 있다 그런 얘기죠. 그래서 그 대학의 교수들, 총장님들 아마 그런데 신경 써야 될 거 아닌가. 어떤 때 보면은 서울의 각 지역의 학생들, 자기네 지역 학생들 위해서 하숙집을 짓거나 하숙소를 지어주거나 하고 있습니다. 그러지 말고 여기에 이제 그 공을 들여야 될 것이다. 또 하나 문제는 아무리 대학에 노력을 해도 교육부의 규제가 풀리지 않는 한은 그 제도되지 않습니다. 지금 서울에 있는 대학이거나 제주도에 있는 대학이나 똑같은 규제 가지고 이걸 관리하려고 하니까 여기에 문제들이 생깁니다. 그래서 규제가 풀려서 서울은 서울 나름대로, 제주도는 제주도 나름대로 특성을 살려서 인력이 양성할 수 있도록 그런 프로그램 만들, 그 사유를 줘야 될 거 아닌가 이런 생각이 듭니다. 그 다음에 하나는 그 월남대학 총장님 그 실망하실 거 없습니다. 그래서 지금 브레인 드레인 가지고 걱정을 하시는데 우리 한국도 가끔 그랬습니다. 그런데 지금 70년대 저희 6.25 사변 때도 제가 알기로는 5,000명 학생들이 미국을 갔습니다. 근데 그 좋은 대학에서 나와가지고 20년, 25년 후엔 다 서울에 돌아왔습니다. 그래서 우리 한국의 경제 발전하는데 제일 중요한 역할을 한 거가 미국에 공부한 그런 우리 그 한국 학생들입니다. 그래서 투자라고 생각하시고 너무 걱정하지 마시도록. 네.
시간을 더 못 끌겠네. 우리 저 지사님 저녁 만찬이 있어서요. 우리 이 5분 발표자들 그리고 우리 방금 전에 전한 이 총장님 포함해서 이분들께 박수로 환영을 좀 보내주십시오. Thank you very much.